Hi, it's Zoe Routh, and I'm recording this in a hotel room in Sydney, so not my usual podcasting bunker. And I've just come from an Uber ride with a man who is a Trump supporter and a Christian fundamentalist. And I am neither of those things. And I wanted to share with you what I learned as a result. So let's get into it. So we were in the car for half an hour on the way out to do a video recording, a promotion for my latest book, People Stuff. And as you do with a stranger in a car for half an hour, you have conversations. And we talked about COVID-19, its impact on business. We talked about my relatives in Canada and the US and how they're suffering. And we got onto the topic of politics in the US. Awesome topic. And my driver shared his point of view. And he talked about being a Trump supporter. And he said, and this is where my ears picked up and dialed in. He talked about being a Trump supporter. And he said, now the man's character and morals, I don't go in for. But he said, I really value his work ethic. I value his principles and what he was trying to achieve in the work that he was doing. And he felt that Trump copped a lot of criticism for his behavior and not necessarily his outcomes. So the point what struck me was not necessarily whether I agreed with him about Trump, and some of the principles and discussions, conversation pieces, I disagreed with him. It wasn't that. It got me questioning and thinking about a couple of things. One was this man's ability to separate the man from the message, to separate Trump, the character, from the message and the outcome. And I thought about this, and it's like, can we do that? And should we do that? It has come up a lot, that whole theme around, can we separate the artist from the art? And we've had lots of artists who have been condemned in their personal world for the choices that they've made, and rightfully so, for being pedophiles or sex abusers, etc. And do we then throw out their art as well, or do we continue to appreciate their art? I think it's a really interesting question. Can we actually separate out the two, the man from the message, the art from the artist? I'm not sure I have a completely solid answer with that. I think it's also interesting to consider how much does the man affect the message and how much does the message affect the man. I use man as a generic term for human. And I think it does affect one another. Who we are as humans definitely affects the message that we give. And I think the message that we give is a reflection of who we are potentially, or at least something that we aspire to be. And I think also that we can take a message, regardless of its origin, and appreciate that in and of itself. I think we need to be able to distinguish these things. And I think it's an important thing to just press pause whenever we feel like we're jumping into judgment around something, to ask ourselves, is it because of the human that's delivering this message that I dislike the message? And conversely, is it because of the message that I like the human, or I'm willing to forgive the human for their behavior? I think this is really important leadership practice. And I think this is a good introduction to what I want to do in this podcast episode, which is review and summarize some of the insights we've had from amazing series of guests over this past season. And our theme is about developing other leaders. And as I look back across all of the guests we've had 10 of them, authors and leaders, and a couple of book reviews as well. What are the common themes that have emerged under this topic of developing other leaders? Is really quite fascinating. So I'm just looking over my notes. I'm recording this on video in case you're watching this or listening to this as a podcast. So there's a couple of things going on at the moment. Okay, one of the key insights I got across all of the interviewees as a general point is that leadership is an inside job first. That we need to do deep work on ourselves. We really need to understand ourselves extremely well if we are to show up and be in best service to others and our purpose. So we need to have an understanding of what our foibles are, what our strengths are, what kind of our preferences are, because those will color and flavor the work that we do in an organization. We cannot be blind to those things. They will taint everything that we do because we will have a particular inclination to develop a culture in a particular way, or to have a different management structure in a particular way because of our own internal preferences. So leadership being an inside job first is my key takeaway. Another one is leadership is an embodied practice. What I mean by that is our physical entity has a huge impact on our emotions, therefore on the energy that we put out into the world. And if we're not intentional about how we manage our physicality, in particular our presence, then we show up willy-nilly with the people around us, and that can have a detrimental or a positive effect. I think when we're intentional about it, when we start to master our physiology through breath work, through posture, through energy management in terms of rest and diet and exercise, then we can bring the best energetic force to play in our leadership roles. And we have a moral responsibility to do that, as well as a influence imperative to do that. So the better we show up, the better we can be as leaders, and the better we will be received by the people that we work with. So that's insight number 2. Leadership is an embodied practice. And the third thing is, and this is a paradox, we need rigorous introspection and forensic focus on others. So we need to both look deeply at ourselves as well as focus deeply on others. And it's the tension between the two that we need to manage carefully. If we have too much introspection, we become, navel gazers, and we can get paralyzed by the fears and trepidations that we discover there, or alternatively become narcissistic and too obsessed with our own self-improvement or our own leadership journey. So we need to make sure that we do this rigorous introspection piece without defaulting to either being a tyrant or a weakling. Ooh, terrible word. Tyrant or self-obsessed, let's put it that way. As well as focusing obsessively on others, but not to the point where we become martyrs and we give up ourselves. So it's a lovely paradox that we need to balance. So those are some of the key insights I gathered from this fabulous series over this particular season. I just wanted to single out a couple of interesting experiences along the way. Things that made me go, during this season. And the first one is the interview with Matt Casey, whose concept of throw out the rules of management, give it all up, stop having daily meetings, stop having performance reviews, stop ranking people, get people to rank themselves, get people to self-manage, was basically the moment for me. I'm like, does this really work? What is the impact on the people around you? And is it possible for people to embrace this? So the answers I'm coming to discover as I think and read about this, and I read Jacob Morgan's latest book, The Future of Work, which is a very good book, actually. It took me ages to get around to it, but I quite like it. And he talks about this whole holacracy concept, self-managing teams, essentially, which is what Matt Casey was sort of advocating. Well, he's kind of advocating more, I want to say anarchy, but it's not quite anarchy. It's basically saying, the job, get on with it. And when you create a vacuum, people step into it, was one of his key principles. What Jacob Morgan says about self-managing teams is that it's not really scalable. So there's no organization that has done it with thousands and thousands of people. It works for smaller teams and organizations. And there's still some hierarchy that's required. We still need people to have accountability and sign off and ultimate decision-making power. Does it work? My thinking on this is that if you ask people to self-manage, they need to have a certain level of leadership maturity and a certain particular skill level in order to do that. If you ask people to self-rate themselves, and also if they feel like they're worthy of a promotion, to nominate themselves for a promotion, that requires a number of different things in an organization, such as a really safe environment that people feel able to do that, and also that people have the skills and leadership maturity to be able to vouch for themselves and to articulate the reasons why they feel they deserve a promotion or a pay rise. And not everybody's up to that. And I think we make a lot of assumptions as leaders, or we can make a lot of assumptions as leaders about the environment that we've created. I think as leaders, we tend to think that the environment is safe. And the reality is that's because we're in charge and we feel safe because we're in charge. I think as leaders, we need to never make that assumption or assume that as a fact. I think we need to continually be working on creating a safe workplace. And that means checking in with people, asking how they are, role modeling, sharing mistakes and learning and insights, asking people for feedback on how we're performing as leaders, and really showing up curious and humble and caring. So curiosity, humility, and care are the 3 attributes of the elder archetype that I talk about in People Stuff, my latest book. We need to model that and practice that regularly. So is it possible? I don't know. I still want to see the outcomes of that particular organization. And I think that particular approach to management, in Matt Casey's point, also needs to reflect the type of work that's being done. In some organizations, because of the type of work, that will never work. Because the organization is focused on customer service, say, as opposed to a technical operational like his organization. And so I think we need to really consider the nature of the culture, and does the nature of the culture fit the strategy that we're trying to implement? And then we can make management decisions as a result of that. So that was my moment for this particular season. Okay, I had the fangirl moment. In fact, there were 2 fangirl moments on this particular series. One was with Ginny Whitelaw, and I just loved her book, Resonate, Zen and the Way of Making a Difference. I read it cover to cover, page by page, highlighted heaps of it, and practiced all of her exercises. It's all about embodied leadership and bringing practices of Aikido and meditation and energy amplification into your leadership. And it was powerful and unique, and I loved it, and I loved interviewing her, and I am a raving fan. And the second fangirl moment was interviewing Liz Wiseman, who is the author of Multipliers. Oh my goodness, what a wonderful piece of work this book is. And the way that she structures all of her programs as a result of that book, I think is amazing, just from a fellow professional. But her IP has really landed well with my clients and the work they were doing in my program Amplifiers. And a lot of my amplifiers were really amazed at the ability to look at their flaws and be able to circumvent them. So I think that piece is quite amazing. So those are my 2 fangirl moments for the podcast. There was my embarrassing moment of the season. It definitely, hands down, is the interview with Ral Dolan, where we started talking about Barbie. If you haven't listened to that episode, well, you just have to go back and listen to that episode. She's great from a storytelling point of view, and that was quite an embarrassing moment. I was blushing a lot, as I quite often do on the podcast in some of the interviews, but you can't necessarily see it because I don't always film them by video like on this one. And my last category of awards, I guess, of the respect moments. And there were 3 leaders I want to highlight, and one is Averil Foster. The second one is Melanie Brock, and the third one is Jordan Kibukamusoke. All very different leaders, all very different contexts. Averil's running her own family law firm as a new leader, and with her business partner, and they took over an existing firm, had all sorts of challenges, and just the humility and determination to do that as 2 young moms as well, I thought was pretty amazing. And Melanie Brock for leading in a different culture and bridging the differences between a Japanese and Australian culture, I thought was remarkable. And Jordan, not only is he my nephew, but he just showcased what it takes to be a humble learner and to be keen to grow and contribute. And as somebody who doesn't have kids, I feel like I can be sort of left out in the cold. They're like, what's really going on with young people out there? And it was really wonderful to hear his stories about what's great, what's challenging, and what it's like to be new kid on the block, to learn systems for the first time, to see culture in workplaces for the first time. I learned a lot from having a conversation with him. All right. Okay, what else we got? Oh, well, that's it for the summary for this particular season. Next season, our next season's theme is leading in complexity. And there's some amazing interviews that we've got coming up. around different topics around this. Really mind-challenging interviews, great new concepts, great new authors to share with you. I'm pretty super excited by that. And lastly, Amplifiers. Amplifiers is going strong. I'm on a mission to grow this community, and it's for CEOs, managing directors who want to have more influence and impact so that you can create bigger and better results year after year. We have a Canberra-based community as well as a virtual community. And from all sorts of different leaders from all sorts of different sectors, from construction to professional services to agriculture, you got it. And the diversity is what brings such richness to the program. So you can have conversations from people from all sorts of different places. You discover that there's common themes, and you can learn how each leader has approached things in a different way. So that is my invitation to you. If that's you, if you want to be part of such a great community, join us. Have a look at the program, see if it's right for you. Let's have a conversation. I can get to know you and see if it is something that can be of service in your leadership development. I would love to meet you and work with you if you are a big thinker with a big heart who wants to make a big difference. All right, that's it from me this time round. I hope you are having a spectacular day wherever you are listening to this. And if you're loving the podcast, I would love it if you gave us a little bit of karma and gave us a thumbs up, a rating, or a review. In the meantime, live well, lead well.